from America's finest city. This is Real Talk San Diego on ESPN 1700.
What's happening, gang? You are back live in the Secret Stash, tracking down some important local people, talking about some important local stuff. Who knows, Joel, maybe a story or two in the process I would venture to bet with you. And the singular goal for the next hour of leaving you a little better than how we found you. I'm your host, Jesse Ibanez, co-founder of the Greenhouse Group, helping folks get into and homes right here in the heart of San Diego. You want a little bit more about what we do? Welcome to go down to thegreenhousegroupinc.com. And in the studio today, so Joel, I don't know if we got any stats to kind of back this up, but it seems as the market trends move, so too also do the disputes. It's kind of like a tide almost, with the ebb and flow moving in different directions. And because of that, there seems to be some themes that are sort of percolating up towards the top in typical residential real estate transactions right now. And that's why we tracked down one of San Diego's finest to impart us with his infinite wisdom. I'm talking to Joel Incorvaia of Incorvaia Associates, right up here in San Diego, off the 5, actually, up in the Timbers, right?
Right.
You got your headquarters.
Santa Fe and Del Mar.
Yeah, and I'll even throw the baton over to you, my man. So for your fan base, you know, I know they're lined up outside the door right now chanting your name, but for the folks who don't know you yet, perhaps introduce yourself.
I'm Joel Incorvaia. I've been practicing real estate corporate law in San Diego for 36 years. Actually went to law school locally here at University of San Diego and basically lived in North San Diego County for 39 years or so. And we have a boutique law practice, but our major emphasis is real estate law and corporate issues, both litigation and transactional.
Perfect segue also for what seems to be some common themes right now. So I'm obviously not in your domain, but man, there's a lot of seller disclosure things going on right now. I don't even know if that's the right frame to necessarily put on it, but that's one of the themes for today. Is you might even kind of repurpose them as seller disclosure traps, right, and potential pitfalls when trying to sell some residential property. So tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing in that capacity.
Well, what we're seeing is a buyer buying a home, and after they move in, and we're specifically talking here mostly about used property resales, right, and discovering they have a problem. Maybe it's with the plumbing. Maybe they have a leak, with a copper pipe or something like that. They find termite damage. They find different construction issues, and they go back to the seller and maybe even their real estate agent, and they say, "Why wasn't this disclosed to me? Why do I have a problem when I had all these professionals involved in the buying process to help me? I had a building inspector. I had a real estate agent who was supposed to be looking at the property. I had the seller who's supposed to be disclosing things to me, and now I have a problem, and I'm looking for somebody to go after to cover what I consider to be a loss." And we do have a much more litigious society today than we did 30, 40, 50 years ago, and many more people are willing to enter into the litigation process to recover damages, real or imagined.
And again, you're almost lobbing like volleyballs up perfectly as segues. So real or imagined, I would say the two forms that tend to manifest this conversation the most would be the two that are sitting in front of you right now, right, in studio, right, which are the
real estate transfer disclosure statement, which is required under California law to be signed and filled out by every seller of residential property, and another document that the California Association of Realtors came up with a few years ago called the Seller Property Questionnaire. It's not required by law, but the brokers want to make sure the sellers fill it out completely to make sure that the brokers are covered and the seller meets all of their disclosure requirements. Because under California law, and this has been true for probably 50 years, a seller has a very high duty of disclosure to a buyer. Mm-hmm. A seller must disclose to the buyer, now in writing, every defect in the house that they're selling of which they have knowledge. Now, you don't have to go out and look for defects. You don't have to hire somebody to come in and check to make sure everything is kosher in the home. But if you've had any kind of problem, any kind of material problem with the house, that has to be disclosed. First in the real estate transfer disclosure statement, and also in the seller property questionnaire, which is what the real estate brokers want you to fill out as well.
And these are about as much fun as doing dentistry on yourself. I mean, let's
Exactly.
be honest, right? But, if the number one axiom of real estate that everybody knows and can follow is location, 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 number two's got to be disclose, disclose, disclose. Could it not?
Yeah. And the problem is that a lot of the sellers don't realize how high that duty of disclosure is. And oftentimes a real estate agent who oftentimes just wants to make sure the deal closes. I mean, nobody wants to blow a deal, blow a sale because there's an undisclosed problem with a home, or maybe a disclosed problem that might scare buyers away. They'll often come in and say, oh, here's a few forms you need to fill out as part of the sale process, but they don't actually go through the forms in detail to make sure that the sellers disclose everything of which they're aware, or even go back and think about the problems they may have had in the home in the past, because sometimes you have to go back 20, 25 years if you've been a long-term homeowner and think about all the things that may have happened that maybe a buyer would want to know about.
And the challenge, of course, therein is even, let's say, if you get like a good, wholesome agent, who's not trying to get like slippery to get a deal, to lubricate a deal to make sure it closes. There's also a little gray area in like giving a seller coaching around that stuff too. It's like the seller is supposed to fill out to the best of their knowledge what is material to the property, right?
Correct.
So it's like, short of actually sitting there and grabbing onto their hand and walking around every single wall of the house and being like a medium, like, what do you know here? There's an interesting little relationship between even filling out that form in the first place, is there not?
Absolutely. And it's important for the real estate broker to be as big a part of the process as possible, because they're the ones that know what issues come up.
Right.
And usually when you're selling a house, the last thing you're thinking about is, oh, what do I have to disclose?
Yeah.
And some of the common problems we have are things like, what if there was some remodeling work done, but you didn't get a building permit for it?
Right.
What if your garage, even before you bought the house, because this happened to me in a house I had in Cardiff once, the garage had been converted into a family room.
Living area,
probably without a building permit.
Probably not.
Didn't really think about it at the time, and when I sold the home, it never became an issue. But later I was thinking, that probably isn't even a legal garage conversion. And I bought it from a bank as an REO, and they never told me, oh, this may not be legal.
Right.
But there's a lot of people that have rooms that were converted into living space, probably illegally.
Yeah.
And they're not even aware that they have to disclose that fact, or that might be an issue for a buyer.
So what's I want to borrow from your 36 years of infinite wisdom here. Like what's a good example of something, maybe in the not too distant past, where something like this came up? Maybe a good example, a good learning lesson for the rest of us.
Sure. I could talk to you about two cases that we actually took to trial. One involved a retired doctor, a really nice man, sold a house in Point Loma to a buyer, and he thought that he would be really helpful to the buyer by putting together a little book that kind of explained how everything in the house worked. Like, this is how the oven works, this is how the plumbing works and so forth. And
which is totally character-based. Like, if you're cool, you do that, right?
You're a nice guy.
Yeah.
You're trying to help. But one thing he said in a little book, he said, there is a clean out in the backyard, and whenever the
like a sewer plumbing clean out.
Sewer plumbing. Yeah. And if anytime the toilets overflow, you have a sewage backup, just go into that clean out, and then you can do your little rotor-rooter thing, and you can clean it out.
Oh man.
So, and now he told me, after this case progressed, he said, hey, that happened maybe 3 times in 25 years I lived there. But you read the little book, and it made it sound like every week he's in there with the cleaning out sewage backup. Well, anyway, he sold the house, and right after the buyers moved in, guess what? They had problems with one of the sewage lines backing up.
Which always happens because people have different habits when it comes to that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had a younger couple with children, probably using the bathrooms a lot more. It turned out that the sewage line did not flow directly to the street. It would kind of went a little bit uphill, or it was flat, so the sewage could not get basically from the toilets to the street.
Yep.
And kind of the old adage is, what cannot flow uphill.
Well done.
So anyway,
well done. You get a little golf clap for that one. That was good. That's good.
Unfortunately, when we took the case to arbitration, the other side, the first thing he did is they took out the little book and they showed it to this nice old fellow, a retired doctor, nice man, and said, look, why did you say that you'd had problems with this sewage, and you put it in the book here, and you showed exactly how to fix it, and you never disclosed it to us before we bought the home. And that ended up costing my client $60,000.
$60,000
at the end of the
for
day,
being the nice guy.
Being the nice guy.
That's just one example of why we got Joel Incorvaia in the house. And, of course, he's of Incorvaia Associates right over here in, what would you call it? Would you call that Solana Beach, technically?
Well, we have a Del Mar zip code, and that's our address in Del Mar, but we're physically in Solana Beach.
Okay, got it. So you know where that is. It's the Timbers, that beautiful wood-looking building when you're driving up the 5, probably once or twice a day. And you can catch him, by the way, at Incorlaw. That's INCORLAW.com, or you can call him right over there at 858-259-2220. Now, Joel, you might not know this. We're actually streaming this whole thing live right now through the Meerkat app on our Twitter handle. So if you want to see how handsome Joel looks today and all of his duds, you can catch us over at Follow the Stash, and you can even tweet Joel a question live. So let's do this, Joel. Coming up, I want to hear that second example of the seller disclosure story that you got. And then I also want to start getting into the number 1 and number 2 buyer things you got to watch out for. One has to do with someone who you think's on your team, and the other has to do if you're buying a condo, which is a very common transaction in San Diego County, as you know, my man. So thanks for hanging out with the Stash Gang. Real Talk Radio. We'll be right back.